Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. My goodness, what a complicated introduction I have for the DEX Show today. So many things to mention because, as some of you will no doubt notice, you are not just hearing our voices today, you are seeing Tim and I on the screen. And that's because we are both here in London town to present Experience Everywhere tomorrow in person. And it's not only the first time Tim and I are recording a DEX Show episode together in flesh and blood, but it's also the first time we're making a video version of today's episode. And if you're just hearing me say this and you think, what video version, just head over to the DEX Hub and you can see the full recording. But it's a very special occasion for all of those reasons and more, no doubt. And I'm glad to say we have a very, very special guest today, and that is Sally Winston from Qualtrics. Sally, welcome.
Thank you.
To the DEX Show. I'm
very honoured to be the first of your live in-person guests.
Thank you for saying so. We are honoured to have you. I have to say, Qualtrics fascinates me. And if my first questions sound a bit rote, all right, it's because it interests me so much, right? Like I genuinely I want the background. I want to know, I want your description of what Qualtrics is and what it does. So let's start with yourself. Tell us about what you do there and your history at Qualtrics, first of all, please.
Sure. So I lead out on the employee experience practice for the EMEA region, and I essentially run a team of subject experts who help customers understand what experience management is from an employee perspective, of which DEX is a key component. I've worked for Qualtrics since 2019, so have seen, IPOs and relationships evolve with SAP, etc., and have seen huge growth in that time. So since I joined, huge growth in the practice of employee experience in XM in general, and I can talk a bit about what XM is if that's interesting, and just also in the kind of environment in which we're working, and how that impacts how people feel about their experiences and what experience means. So very exciting company to be part of, but also really interesting time, I think.
Come into vogue, I think it's fair to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's kind of worked in the space of employee experience as it was defined, as it has been defined over the years for like a number of decades, I am that old, it's something that HR people have cared about for a while, but their interpretation and version of what it is has changed dramatically, and the relationship that they have with the IT leaders within businesses and how employees experience their experience, to use that word multiple times,
makes sense.
Has changed loads, yeah.
So if you're at a dinner party
and
someone you don't know you sat next to and say, what do you do? How do you explain Qualtrics? How do you lay it out for them?
Well, if I'm at a dinner party and someone has no idea what I'm talking about, I say I help people be happier in their work. Very basic.
Very nice way.
Yeah, and then sometimes that leads into a conversation. At scale. Sometimes that leads to a conversation about how, I'd never be happy in my job, and goes off down, nice. A bit like a doctor, goes off down a route you don't want to go down. But I would say essentially what we're trying to do through technology is help organisations understand their stakeholders, analyse their feedback and their experiences, and drive improvements in those experiences. So whether that's customers, employees, how people interact with products and brands, and all of those things combined, we essentially take data from operational sources. One of the reasons why this relationship is super exciting with NextThink, and we apply an understanding of how people feel and how they experience things, and then help companies improve in real time at scale.
Absolutely. We'll get to that partnership momentarily, I promise. And but a quick question. I mean, you talk about that data, and there was a recent survey. I just checked it was an ETX survey. Is that right?
Yeah.
I couldn't barely read my handwriting for a second there. I was worried. But and I thought maybe as a glimpse into what the data is currently telling you at scale through this survey, maybe you could give us some insights from that.
Yeah, so to explain the jargon, ETX is similar to how you think about DEX, right? It's our definition of the same thing, so employee technology experience. And what we have recently done is a study of IT leaders, CTOs, in organisations with more than 1,000 people, to understand what are the things they're focusing on, what are the key trends that they care about, and where is their minds when it comes to thinking about prioritisation around different topics. A couple of the really interesting things I think are coming out is the need to pivot and be able to respond to change. I think that's probably not surprising given the climate that people have been through and they're going into. That's one of the top priorities for IT leaders. How do we understand and respond to change quickly? Another theme that's interesting, I think particularly in terms of what we all do, is their prioritization of improvement around data and the use of data in decision making, that becoming one of the top priorities for that group of leaders, and making sure that that data is high quality, that it's we're leveraging as much data as possible whilst also protecting anonymity, I think is an interesting piece, especially on the employee side. And then the third thing that I think is really interesting, that when we look at what they're prioritizing, whether it be employee experience versus customer experience, they're saying that the majority are saying that they're prioritizing fixing employee experience above customer experience.
One drives the other, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say employee experience is perhaps something that hasn't always been at the forefront of thinking around, like latest innovation.
Right.
Companies have tended to focus on the customer first, right? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. All of those themes kind of stand out as the most kind of compelling and really relevant, I guess, to what we all do.
So employees have been through a tremendous amount of change. You started at Qualtrics before the COVID lockdowns. How has the Qualtrics thinking changed as we've moved from this brick and mortar to a functional digital office? How does the employee experience and your thinking change as you go through that?
Yeah, so it's been an incredibly interesting time. I think I think what it's done is it's kind of fast tracked a lot of the thinking that we had around innovation in this space. Many of the companies that we were working with weren't ready for it. They were sort of, we understand the concept, but we're perhaps not ready to be listening in the moment, in real time. We're not quite there yet, especially CHRO type profile buyers. And what we found is this huge, kind of urgent adoption of that kind of thinking as we went into the pandemic. So as an example, we released a solution called How Are You, which was like a free solution that companies could use to check in with their employees. Is stuff working? How are you feeling? Like, what do we need to do differently to keep you engaged and motivated and
you can't wait
healthy?
For the pulse survey that's coming out in 6 months.
Exactly,
right?
You can't wait for that.
Yeah.
I think we had thousands of companies picking that up and using it within days of its launch. Right. And what it did is it helped CHROs in particular to kind of say, do you know what, we can test this, we can use it, and it isn't as radical a way of thinking as we perhaps thought it was. The other thing I think that's been really interesting is how people think about the employee experience, right? So I suppose companies often might have thought about this is the employee experience in terms of everything that a person experiences at work, how their manager behaves, how they're communicated to, their office location. And then here's the technology bit. Yeah. The technology bit has become fundamental, like one of the most important things, but it also has started to influence everything else. Like, you cannot be an effective manager in an organization without utilizing great technology to communicate. You cannot create a great onboarding experience for new people without considering how technology plays a role in that process. So I think that the shift has been huge, and that'll be one of the things I'm talking about tomorrow, is the topic of how the CIO and the CHRO have become much more a team in handling that kind of challenge. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot with guests about this concept of an XLA. IT operates under SLAs, right? The service level agreement. How quickly can I respond? How quickly can I put the fire out? How quickly can I get you back up and running? But the XLA is more focused on the employee, the experience level agreement. How has that concept influenced the work at Qualtrics, and how does it affect your view of kind of employee experience as a whole? Yeah, so we've talked for years about this concept of what we used to call X plus O, so experience data and operational data coming together, and the capture of that through the surveys that we might be running,
in terms of asking people specific questions. The integration of data sources is something we talked about for a long time. It's only really, I would say quite recently, that companies have begun to completely adopt that as a strategy, and to have been, to make that kind of central to the way they think about experience. So for me, it's about like taking all of that SLA data and then layering in an understanding of, is this technology working, but is it making me more productive? And is it delivering on the promise?
And correlating the two.
The two, yeah. And helping, I think what's exciting is the ability to help IT leaders not just fix things quickly, but to understand what the impact of that fix would be, and to perhaps prioritize based on what makes the biggest difference to whether people can do their jobs well, whether they're happy in their workplaces, and whether they stay.
Impact of the fix, but also the impact of the breakage to begin with, right? I'm a big advocate. If you're fixing things over and over and over again, even if you're really good at it, you're still breaking things a lot. And the whole key would be to understand the impact of the breakage and figure out how you can really enable those employees without breaking them.
Yeah, definitely. And that for me is like, there's two ways of thinking about data that you collect in this kind of process. There's how you fix things individually, and how you understand and give people a chance to give an opinion, as well as telling you this didn't work or this got fixed. How's it made me feel? And giving like that holistic picture to be able to say to IT leaders, this is how things are trending, these are the priorities, etc.
So we talked a bit about the partnership between Qualtrics and NextThink. It's fascinating. Tom touched on it a little bit. Bringing IT and HR together, there's so many possibilities. Where is it leading your thinking, not only about that partnership, but what excites you about, maybe a little bit of history first of the partnership, and what excites you about it moving forward?
Yeah, so I think, the history, my understanding, I was actually on maternity leave when the partnership was formed, so focusing on other things. Also still very interested, of course, but I think like the start of the relationship very much formed from our chief product officer had a relationship into people in NextThink, and could see the potential, and his background and focus very much comes from that kind of IT, what we would call the ETX landscape. I think for us, it's about the realization of the opportunity to combine X and O, and to work with people who are actually creating really fantastic data and have the same sort of philosophy around experience. So I think, for me, that's why it's so exciting, because customers want to be able to make that connection. They want to be able to bring those two things together to improve experiences. And you guys are collecting and bringing that data to life for people. So we can layer in the kind of the heart and the the human element of where you're focusing in terms of helping people improve process.
And it's fascinating too to be able to do it in a proactive way, in a just-in-time way, and collect that and correlate it in a meaningful way, right? Employees want to have a voice. They don't want to be the monitoring system and have to call in my problems all the time. Same thing with their opinion and how they're feeling. So
exactly.
It's a great partnership.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good.
And you're on stage tomorrow, as we are. We're all a little nervous here about this.
I'm not that nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got more experience doing this than we have. We're a little new. But you mentioned earlier you're going to be discussing the relationship, the dynamic between the CIO and the CHRO.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Yeah. And we often talk about it on the show. We've talked about it before. And we typically have people coming into it more from the IT side, and we ask them about how the CIO sees a relationship, what their feelings are about it. So I think it would be natural to maybe ask you to give us some insight from the other side of that divide, and how the CHRO are approaching this, and what you're going to be talking about tomorrow in general. Yeah,
so I think for CHROs, I think they probably, perhaps, not in every scenario, right, but perhaps seen CIOs as like, not really thinking about what they're trying to achieve in terms of the employee journey, right? And they're kind of perhaps tasked with using certain technologies that don't necessarily align with the experience they want to create from a journey point of view, from every stage, from when you're hiring candidates all the way through to exit. So I think what we're seeing is this huge shift, and it was definitely supercharged by COVID, because they had to work together. And there was, lots of really fantastic innovation during that time to help the hybrid workplace just make sense. So I think what we're seeing is like this shift in the way that CHRO, they think of IT leaders as partners in solving a challenge. I think there's also a huge trend in our space towards a need to focus on more like innovation and technology in the experience. So CHROs are having to rely on CIOs and IT leaders to help them think through what the best approach might be.
Develop the strategy.
Yeah, because there's so many tools out there and so many kind of ways that you could go with technology, and you have to do it in such a way that's going to be effective in the business, right? The increasing cost pressure, the need to demonstrate ROI is also really important. So I think what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is the kind of move from, I suppose, them being like acquaintances.
Yeah, sure.
CHROs were trying to build experiences.
They go on
CIOs
retreats together.
Maybe didn't talk the same language. Not necessarily friends. Towards a process during COVID where they became friends. Like, how do we fix for these problems? Let's work together to do that. Towards now where we're like, what's the hybrid work environment like? How do we make sure that we're making the best use of all of this fantastic technology that exists to drive better experiences?
It can actually help enable each other to succeed.
Yeah, and I'll be talking a bit about why technology experience is so important to employees and how it relates into themes like the Great Resignation. I don't know how much you guys kind of...
It's come up now and
It
then.
comes up once in a while, and again tomorrow it will.
Yeah.
I'm having to talk him out of resigning frequently. So that's the main cause.
Well, you have great technology, and that stops people from resigning. So,
hanging on.
So I think that's really why it's exciting for me. I think there's just a huge opportunity for technology to improve employee experiences, and CHROs can see that, but they're often not. They don't understand that it's not their background, right? In the same way, it's not really my background. My background's in the HR space. So speaking the right language, working together, understanding the vision and applying technology to that vision, I think is where the future lies.
Do you anticipate any kind of symbiosis between the roles to become increasingly common? I mean, there was a lot of talk last year about chief experience officer as being a kind of up-and-coming executive role. Is that on your radar? Or?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot more emphasis on there being technology skills, data skills within HR practices and in HR teams. So I think when we think about the experience leader, we often think about that as being more across like employee experience, customer experience, etc., and the tying together of all of those themes, and IT being kind of central to that piece as well. So a little bit, but maybe we come at it from a slightly different point of view.
Well, looking forward to your appearance tomorrow. Anything you're looking forward to in particular on the agenda yourself? Have you had a chance to have a look at it?
I have had a little look.
Okay.
I think for me, just listening to how IT leaders are talking about the challenges they're facing at the moment is really interesting. I think because I come from a CHRO style background. I think about things from that point of view. So hearing from their point of view, I think is going to be fascinating for me, just to hear what they're prioritising and how that's shifting with the current climate. Yeah.
I think you're going to bring a lot to the agenda tomorrow. I really do. Final question for you. When you look at the bigger picture for Qualtrics over the next couple of years, I mean, is everything we've been discussing today, do you think that's going to be a really dominant part of it, or does it fit into a larger strategy, do you think, that's easy to sort of articulate?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a fundamental part of the strategy. I think the consolidation of spending in this space is a really interesting theme that lots of our customers are coming to us asking us to help them fix for and to really think about. I think there's a lot of focus in our organisation on how we bring different data sources together. So, with the launch of a product called Discover, which takes sentiment and allows people to analyse like open sentiment in real time, which I think is like really cool from the perspective of IT experience, but also broader experience. That's something we're definitely focusing on. And I think, there's a lot of investment and focus on partnerships like the one we have with you to bring experience into the holistic way a business runs, as opposed to it being seen as a kind of separate thing that only certain people care about.
Get rid of the silos.
Yeah, definitely. And then when I think about some of the work we're doing what we call people science, which is, the expertise around the design of methodology. There's lots of investment in how we help organisations like yours and your end customers to measure what the reality of experience is in that context. So some cool stuff coming up in terms of methodologies, I think, as well.
Teach for technology companies about human beings.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
It's a tough
Before the robots take over.
Look, Sally, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for doing Experience Everywhere. Really looking forward to seeing you on stage tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
And I guess I'll just finish by saying thanks for listening, thanks for watching. And this is going to be one of two. So Tim and I are also going to be hosting Experience Everywhere in New York in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll be filming another of these special DEX Show episodes while we're out there. And not quite sure when this will be released, but we will include some links to it in the blog, in the show notes, to some of the Experience Everywhere materials, so you can look at what we've captured on film and such like from the show itself. So until next time, change makers, thanks for joining us for this first ever filmed episode.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.